Before we start this tutorial, let's do a quick recap of what we learned in our previous tutorials. We looked at three important objects: the request, the session, and the context objects. The request object is something that gets created for every user request. If you just type something in the URL and press go, or you click on the link, or you submit a form, every time you do something like that, a new request object is created and it's passed on to our servlet. And the servlets do get or do post or do whatever method executes, and it takes this request object, does the processing, and prints out the response. A session object is something that is available throughout a user session. So you open a browser and you're browsing an application, so you're accessing different features of the application, and there are different servlets. So all the while, as long as you're using a single browser and you're the only user who's using it, then you will have a session object associated for you. So to say there's somebody else who's using the same application in a different browser and a different machine, they will have a separate session object available to them. And this session object will be available across servlets. So as long as you're using any servlet in the application, they can just pull up the session object and they can use shared data. And we saw how to retrieve a session object as well in our previous tutorial. And we saw how to write data to it as well. Okay, so this session object is kind of like a global object which is available across sessions, but it's only limited to, on a user-to-user basis. Now, what if you want an object that's available across all servlets for the whole application and across all users? So in that case, you use a context object. There can be only one context object per application, and no matter how many users, no matter how many servlets, no matter how many machines or browsers they use, they will all share the same context object. So you want to keep some data there that is necessary for all the servlets and for all the users. That's when you would use the context object. So we also saw how to pull up the context object from the request object in our earlier tutorial, and we saw how to read and write into it. Another thing that we learned was that whenever an access is made, whenever you type in URL and press go, there will not be a new object created as far as the servlet is concerned. Tomcat will not create a new servlet object. So every request is treated as a separate thread. This is useful because it allows the application to scale to the number of users easily. It doesn't have to create a new object for every request and every user. If the number of requests increase, only the number of threads will increase, but there will not be an equivalent number of objects. This actually has an important implication. When you make a request, right, when you type in the URL and press go, we know that a thread is created and the do get or the do post method is executed. But there is something that actually happens before that. Okay, so say I have this Tomcat container and I have deployed some servlets here. So these are simple .class files. Somewhere along the way, these servlets are actually instantiated, and then servlet objects are created. This depends on a lot of things. It depends on the server itself. It depends on the configuration. But somewhere, Tomcat actually instantiates and has these servlet objects created. I'll just have these two servlet objects here. Now let's say I have a user who wants to access the URL that's served by servlet object 1. Then when the request comes, Tomcat must check if the servlet object is already being instantiated. If it is, then there's a new thread that's created, and this thread will process the request and then return the response. So now there is another user who wants to access the same, makes the request and the same servlet object provides that request and the response. And it must create a new object to create a new thread. Similarly, some other user wants to access the URL that's served by object 2, and Tomcat says, okay, object 2 is already there, I'm just going to create it. So because of this, we can identify there are two important phases for a servlet. The first phase is the first milestone is when the servlet object is actually created. So this happens only once in the servlet lifetime. And the second phase is when the servlet object gets a request, and then a new thread is started. So this happens many times. As the requests come, those many threads are created. So this happens more frequently in a servlet lifetime. So these are the two phases that we need to pay attention to. The first one, when the servlet is actually instantiated as an object, this will be one. And the second one, when the requests come in and then processing happens each time there is a new thread that's created. So this happens multiple times in a servlet lifetime. So there are a few methods that are associated with these two important phases. So those methods actually execute even before the do get and do post methods execute. We have not actually used those methods in our example. We will have to do that unless we actually need something to run during those phases. We will just use the simple do get and do post method, but we can utilize these methods also to run some of our code. So the two methods that we're going to look at are the init method and the service method. The init method corresponds to the first phase that we saw earlier when the object was created from the servlet for the first time. And the service method corresponds to the second phase that we saw earlier, which is whenever a new request comes in, a new thread is created. So an init method happens only once in the servlet stack, and the service method happens for each and every request that the servlet object handles. Now, where are these methods? We haven't actually written them. So these actually come to us because we extend the HTTP servlet class. So these are actually inherited methods. So we'll look at the init and service methods in a bit more detail now. So say this is the first call to the servlet. The servlet object is now created. So what happens is the object has to be created, and the object creates the object is called the init method of that object. The init method takes the parameter for the ServletConfig. This is something that we'll get back to in a moment. But note that the init method is the first method that runs. After the init method runs, then the service method has run, because this is something that's triggered on a call to the server. Say if the object was initialized earlier, it will only be the init method and not the service method. But if the object is initialized along with the call, and if the object is initialized because the call has reached broadcast and the service has processed that request, then the init method is initialized because the object is not going to be there. If the object is created and it's ready to handle the request, now the service method actually processes the request. So what the service method does is, the service method looks at the request and it decides which method of the servlet actually needs to run to process that request. It decides whether to do get has to run or to do post has to run. This is again depending on the method that we're using. So remember in our previous tutorial we used the HTTP get method, then the do get will run, and the HTTP post method is going to do post. So it's actually the service method that's doing that job. It's looking at the method, HTTP method that is received, and it calls the do get or the do post accordingly. Of course, I'm just listing these two methods here, but there are two other HTTP protocols like the put and the delete, and we have corresponding methods for that as well, like the do put and the do delete, and so on. But most of the time we use the do get and the do post to end the method that in this program. So this is for the first call. Now the service has been initialized and we have an object in the context JVM. But the subsequent calls will just directly go to the service method. It does not have to do anything because the object is already there. The same object triggers a different request. So the subsequent calls directly go to the service method, and then again the service method decides whether to do get or to do post has to run, depending on the method, and then it makes the call accordingly. Okay, now we're going to look at where the methods come from, the init and the service. Where are we inheriting them from? So if you look at the inheritance chart, see this is our sub. Previous example is the simple servlet and the extended servlet, all those things. This is the code that we write, this is class that we write. Now our class extends HTTP servlet, you already seen that. Now the HTTP servlet is actually one of the many different types of servlets that are available. HTTP servlet, as per its name, it is a servlet that addresses an HTTP protocol. There could be other servlets that is another protocol, like a mail protocol, for example. So that servlet would be focused only on processing those protocol requests. So the HTTP servlet is for us HTTP requests. Since we are developing web applications, this is the only thing that we will be concerned about. We are not going to get the other stuff. But because there are so many servlets, the servlet architecture has been designed in such a way that there is one common class called the generic servlet that provides all the common servlet functionalities and HTTP. And the HTTP servlet, along with the other protocol servlets, extends this generic servlet. So we have a three-level hierarchy. One is the our servlet, which extends the HTTP servlet. and the HTTP servlet itself, the generic servlet. Now, where are the init and service methods located? The generic servlet has these three methods here. One is the init, that's the ServletConfig parameter. Another init without any parameter, and a service method. We'll look at this init with no parameters in a moment, but just note that it's there. And the generic servlet has all these three methods defined. Now, what's there in the HTTP servlet? The service method is overridden in the HTTP servlet. Why is that? As I told you before, the HTTP servlet is concerned with HTTP protocol. And think about what the service method does for us. The service method looks at the request and then decides whether a get method or a post method has to be the request is a get method or a post method, and then depending on that it calls the get or the post. So what are get and post methods? They are HTTP methods. So it makes sense for the HTTP methods to be implemented in the HTTP servlet. So the service method in the generic servlet is not too much. The core functionality of looking at an HTTP method and then run it into a get and a post, like the HTTP servlet class. So what does our class contain? We already see this. We have a to get and a to post. So this is how it works. The init and the service methods are already there in the generic servlet. The service method has been overridden in the HTTP servlet, and the do get and the do post methods are overridden in the servlet that we get up. So this is the chat that we saw earlier, init, service, and the do get and the do post. So first init method. We don't the overrider. HTTP servlet does not override it. The generic servlet has it, so the init method also generates servlet is called. Service method. We don't override it. It looks up in the HTTP servlet. Yes, the HTTP servlet provides this method. So this service method is from the HTTP servlet. Do get and the do post. Yes, we write it. So this is called. In case we do not implement this and then we get a do get and do post execution, then the HTTP methods do get and do post is called. And they do not do anything. I will mention it here, but they are there. They do not do anything apart from showing us an error message, because we have not implemented it. There will be an error message saying not implemented. So in order to catch these executions, we have to implement the do and do post here, so that our servlet method comes and not the predefined method and the HTTP servlet that takes place.